Hiya! It's time for the third edition of Adult Aspie. That's me. And basically, I'm Kat Lake, and I'm going to take you through, hopefully this month, a little bit about where we're at. Now, the idea was, on my third edition, we were going to get an update on my diagnosis, and we were going to get an update and a report, and we were going to get a proper diagnosis, and I was like really hopeful, and I hate to say it, but that hasn't happened. So what I have got, that's my original report in this hand. 2 reports, not 1, 2. And one was from the psychologist I went to see, and the other one is from the speech and language therapist I also went to see. And basically the idea is that it's to try and ascertain where my weaknesses are and where I struggle. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go through the whole report with you. If you want to know specifics, if you want to know what my results were in particular places, if you have questions about a particular point in the report and you want to know how that compares with mine, or you want to know what mine came out as, fine. Ask a question in the comments below and we'll see what we can do for you. But in the meantime, I'm going to quickly rush over the conclusions and recommendations of each report. It is useful. I've read it and slowly, but I've chunked my way through it. And it is useful to a point. However, neither report nor everything altogether, which is now, 11, 8 and 6 pages worth of reports. So that's like, hang on just a second, 28, 35, something like that. 35 pages worth, something like that, 25 pages? I don't know, I can't work it out. Anyway, 25 pages, yeah, 25 pages worth. See, told you I was rubbish at math. 25 pages worth of reports and still no diagnosis. I was just like, oh, what? So anyway, my first report, this is this one. This was basically a sort of overview. It was with a assessor that basically talked to me at length about everything. What I realised recently was they only really asked me about relationships one-to-one with other people, like that sort of relationship. And they never asked me about my family relationships. So nowhere did it come up that I lost touch with my parents for 8 years, and nowhere did it come up that my brother doesn't talk to me anymore, and nowhere it didn't come up with all sorts of things like that. So that hasn't been taken into consideration until now, where I've actually told them and I've said, actually, I think this is relevant. So anyway, apart from that, the first report basically didn't tell me anything. It was basically a write-up of everything I said. Okay, so there's no point going into the first report, because basically it's just what I said for 3.5 hours, and that's it. So the second report was with Psychologist, and I spent 3.5 hours once again with the psychologist, who has said the following. Okay, the conclusions were that my general abilities are mainly in the average range, but with significantly above average strength in visual reasoning, suggesting that I experience the world in a visual way rather than a verbal one. As you can tell, I can't speak for sweets, but basically, yes. Basically, I visualize the world and try and remember it as I see it, rather than try and verbalize things, which is why I'm so quiet usually when I'm not on air and waffling about something inane. Within this visual ability, she struggled on a task which requires the ability to make a decision in the light of uncertainty. I'm uncertain about a lot of things unless I'm talking about a specific subject, and I'm obsessed with it. Processing speed is significantly lower than that of all her other abilities. This I'm aware of. I've been aware of this for a long time. Ever since I was at school. I struggled at school because it just took so long for me to take stuff in, for me to work out what people were talking about, for me to work out what the teacher was talking about, for me to understand what people were talking about you know, anything really to do with taking in. Sorry, I'm just straightening my hair. So if anybody was talking about something, it would just not go in straight away, and I'd have to really think about it, and try and work out what was going on and what was being said. And before I'd worked it all out, the time had passed and everything had moved on. So if you can imagine, kind of like information going around the room, okay, and you need it to go from here to where you are and then back again in like 2 seconds flat. Well, I used to wait for the information to go right round the room and back to me, and by which time they'd moved on to something else. So that's kind of what it's like. What else can I say? On the tests, executive functioning, got my name wrong here in the report. Demonstrated strength in analytic and logical thinking. Apparently, I'm quite logical and analytic, which is true. I am. And I'm always picking out faults with things. Like you got my name wrong in the report. But that doesn't necessarily mean I remember anything or process anything any quicker. It just means that actually I look at what's in front of me and I just go, that's not right. Or I hear things and I go, that's not right. Or someone will say something and they'll go, I don't know how to work this out. And I'll go, well, it's very simple. You do A plus B equals C. Well, you're not mathematics, of course. Anyway, the point being that I'll see things as they are, and I'll see problems, and I'll see issues, and I'll see breaks in a pattern, and things like that, and I'll just go, it's that. But verbally, words, you know, people are talking at me, then I won't get it at all, and I'll really struggle. I demonstrated issues with multitasking, and particularly switching tasks, both visual and verbal. Now, this we know. Basically, they said, yes, I'm doing lots of tests, because they were doing lots of tests during this meeting, of course, remember. So they were getting me to remember things and talk things back and repeat things and repeat lines of numbers back and look around. Well, they didn't want me to look around the room. This was the thing. They wanted me to name colours and name bits of furniture or something. And the problem was, when I was doing this, I knew exactly what she wanted me to do. And I was looking around the room for cues. I should just be able to just fire them off my head. But what I realised was I was looking around the room for cues. So, like, I'd go purple, right, and sideboard, and then I'd go red, and TV unit. And I'd look around the room for clues. I wouldn't come up with it off my own head. I'd actually look around the room. And eventually I'd run out. And that's when I stopped. I ran out of things to look at around the room and ideas. And I couldn't think of any myself. I had to name them from around the room. So I go, you know, like, in front of me here, there's a storage unit and, like, another colour. I'd have to look for one in the room. So I had to be looking for a colour like cream on the wall. So I couldn't do it out of my own head. I actually had to name things in the room I could see. Anyway, so that was interesting. So that's the conclusions. Is there any on the next page? Let's see. Yes, there is. No. So on the next page, it basically goes on to say that I could not always understand the subtleties of language and had a tendency to take things literally. I was always aware of this when I was younger. And so I've kind of over the years tried to work out what people mean, or might mean, not always successfully. And Kat's, that's me, grip on abstract verbal thinking is often tenuous. And so she constantly has to work against being drawn to more concrete concepts. So yeah, my verbal thinking's shot, really, basically. My imagination's shot, my verbal thinking is shot. I'm very pictorial, very focused on patterns. We learnt this later on in the test. That she said you're totally driven by patterns. What we also noticed is that my thinking shows significant similarities to that of those on the spectrum. Rigidity, issues with true understanding of language, problems with abstract concepts, and responding in the light of uncertainty leading to slow processing. I'm just not good at taking stuff in through my ears and reading stuff, as you can hear, and reading stuff and taking it in and processing it and then sending it out again. Bear in mind that some of this is reading and trying to tell you at the same time, so I'm struggling. But I'm doing my best, bear with me. Although it has not been possible to give her a confirmed diagnosis of ASD, hello, you've already said that I am consistent, and that also that I struggle in lots of things. Anyway, it's not been able to. As reported in the report, there's a lack of evidence and her difficulties during developmental period. Basically, when I was growing up. So when I was a child, they basically say that there's not enough proof in my childhood evidence, which I'm trying to bring together, and I've asked for help from my first girlfriend, from my best friend at school, from my teacher at school, and various reports that I've pulled together, and I've put this information together and sent it to the clinic, and I'm waiting for a response from that. I'll explain what's happened next after I've just finished going through this. So basically, the other things just say that her difficulties are clearly Kat is clearly neurodiverse. Apparently, I'm neurodiverse. Is that a semi-diagnosis? I don't know. I'm neurodiverse. My brain is wired differently than the norm and would benefit from researching. Now, this is the bit that tripped me up, because I thought, okay, there's no diagnosis, therefore I've got to wait for someone else to come up with the final diagnosis. That's fine. Then it says I'd benefit from researching ASD, Asperger's, and neurodiversity. Why would I benefit from research? I have already. I've already done that. I know everything there is to know about ASD, ASC, whatever you want to call it, Asperger's, and neurodiversity. I've done a lot of reading up on this and a lot of watching videos. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't need to read up on it again. And why would you ask me to read up on it if you're not sure that that's where I'm at? Don't ask. Kat has raised the possibility after discussion that other members of my family may display similar characteristics and traits. It's true. And one person in particular is going on and looking for further information and may actually be going to look to see if they might end up being diagnosed as well. Do you inherit ASD? Do you inherit Asperger's? You tell me. Get in touch. Drop me a comment below. Do you inherit Asperger's and ASD from other members of the family? You tell me. And the only other thing I'll mention off this report is that it said there was a couple of symptoms consistent with ADHD, but I'm not sure I have ADHD. Only because I was responding too fast without thinking, I was easily distracted and had difficulty completing projects, is fidgety, has a short attention span, and is clumsy due to inattention. But a lot of those things overlap with ASD as well. So, I don't know. Recommendations were basically to exploit the fact that I'm intelligent, analytical, and logical, and that I should reliably, although it has not been possible to reliably diagnose ASD under DSM-5, which is odd because DSM-5 I thought was the American manual, she would benefit from researching neurodiversity relating to his diagnosis. Hello? Sorry? You'd rather me go and research and diagnose myself, I apologise for the dog drinking water in the background, rather than wait for a proper diagnosis of yourselves. Okay. And the only other thing I'll mention off this report is that it basically just said that I had lots of anxiety and lots of issues relating to my depression. They were aware of those, and that I might like to consider. Hang on a minute, bear with me. I might like to consider referral for CBT. That's cognitive behavioural therapy, I think. to deal with my anxiety and low self-esteem. Part of my anxiety and low self-esteem at the moment is the fact that I haven't got a diagnosis yet. Just thought I'd put that out there. Oh yeah, and despite being transgender, not my phone, reading around females with ASD may be helpful for Kat. Okay. E.g. Women and Girls with Autism Spectrum Disorder by Sarah Hendricks. Anybody ever read that? Tell me what you think of that. There was various other comments about things in my family. There was various other comments about stuff I've already mentioned, about behaviour and so on. Tendency to respond fast. One thing they say in here is that is possibly down to the feeling of having to prove myself, and that some of my jumping to conclusions and prejudging may all have something to do with that, with basically trying to prove that I'm capable of something, or trying to make sure I don't fail because I'm a bit scared of failure. And what's the last thing I'll mention on this paper, because I'm then going to move on to the other one. It was all anxiety stuff again. Visual reasoning again was fine. Oh yeah, and that I should use reminders, that I should put little post-it notes everywhere, which is fine, except I then get used to the post-it notes being there, and if I make little notes I get used to the notes being there, and then they get buried under something else, so that doesn't work. I do use my phone a lot, but the problem I've found with my phone lately is I try and put a reminder in my phone to tell me to take, say, my meds of a night. And then, like the other night, I was out when the alarm went off, okay? So it said, don't forget your tablets. I was like, okay, I'll do it when I get home. Now, what I forgot to do was snooze the alarm until I got nearer home, or at least at home. And then the alarm didn't go off again, and I completely forgot. I got up next day, and it wasn't until late next day afternoon that I suddenly remembered I hadn't actually taken my meds the night before. So I'm going to have to put either 2 alarms on, or make it so that there's a note on the end to say, snooze this, don't delete it, or something, I don't know. There was mention about, oh yeah, that's what they said. They said there was no imagination in my head. So basically, that there was no point doing things like mindfulness based on imagining you're on a beach and, you know, somewhere quiet, and imagine you're sort of like watching the sea and stuff, because I wouldn't be able to, which is true, because I'm rubbish at imagining. I'm anyway, really. So there we go. So, you know, there's lots of things in there that are interesting and useful, particularly about how my head works. But they also said, I'll mention this again in a future video, because they mentioned about using squeeze balls and fiddly objects and things like that, which I know Katie has mentioned in one of her videos. I'm going to get hold of some, because I can see the point, because I do fiddle and I do tap and I do all sorts of things, and it'd be nice to have something that meant I could concentrate on the TV and fiddle with something without having to fiddle with the laptop or fiddle with my phone or whatever else. So if it was something that wasn't electronic, is what I'm trying to get at. If it wasn't electronic, then I'd have something that I could play with that would focus me on the TV without fiddling with something else and distracting me away. So I'm going to get some of those, and we'll have a look at them in a future video, and we'll see. But I know Katie's done a similar video, and maybe I'll put the link into that if I can find it. Yeah, so I'm going to circle that, and we'll come back to that in a future video. Apart from that, there wasn't very much else in that report, really. There was lots of testing. I'm not going to go into the specific details, but I've told you the overview. And the results were they were interesting. I don't really understand them fully, because I need to sit a bit longer and read them, but I will come back to them. If you specifically want to know about anything in particular, I will research it properly. But basically, in a nutshell, it said that that's how I think, and I think very visually, and I don't do words, and I don't do talking very well, and I don't concentrate. The other one, very quickly, because we've already been 20 minutes, is from the speech and language therapist, which I can't even say properly, so that's a good start. The speech and language therapist wrote a report as well, all very interesting. Again, she did make it clear at sort of towards the very start that there was no way, because the team hadn't come up with a diagnosis for me. This was very much based on just what I did on the day. But I have made the point that all the tests I did on that day, which was a month or so ago now, 2 months ago, was me doing the tests on that day, like here and now, in the present. And I'm 41 next week. Yes, really, 41 next week. And so therefore, anything that happened when I was a child, that was probably 2.5, 3 decades ago, probably isn't going to matter much today. Is it really? Come on, is it? Really? No. So, I don't know what they're trying to get at. I'll explain what's going to happen next once I've finished running through this, but very quickly. This report was all about my speech and language, and I was able to interact properly, I was high functioning, I was talking properly like I do to you, I was chit-chattering away. However, I missed the subtle points. So things like the sort of underlying stories of things, the underlying meanings of stuff, the underlying language, what was meant by certain things that were said. The language was quite narrow, and my understanding of stuff was quite narrow. So, but my answers were quite simple. It was kind of like you have red, yellow, and green on a traffic light. It wasn't that the traffic lights would stop and stop cars, and they would regulate the traffic light or anything like that. It was like they have 3 lights on, that sort of thing. That wasn't one of the questions. I'm just illustrating that my interpretation of traffic lights was very much based on the colour of the bulbs, rather than what happened around them. So anyway, I think that makes sense. The report went on just to basically say what I struggled with and what was a problem, and how I scored. I scored quite well. The one I scored really well in, here's the really weird thing, once again, visual. Looking at the picture, there was apparently a burglary. And I spotted all the things in the burglary picture. I was like, but so could happen, and such could happen, and that could be, it's the wrong way around. It's quite good spotting that, which is quite interesting, because when I did originally go for the police, because I actually applied to join the police at one time, and I was brilliant. I passed all the observation tests and all the preliminary, can you see what's going on and can you take evidence and stuff? Fine, no problem at all. I failed the run. I failed the physical. I was rubbish because I just wasn't prepared. And I hadn't actually thought in my head I needed to get prepared. And then it was very clear I needed to. This was when I was 17 or something like that. It was ridiculous long time ago. What else did she say? It's quite complicated, which is why I can't go into it in too much detail right off the bat. I'd have to sit and write up a script for the edition of the vlog if I was going to go into specifics, because it would take forever. Let's have a look at her conclusion, which is here. I'll just skim. It's a good insight into my communication differences. There are differences in my communication that jeopardise my ability to smoothly negotiate social interaction, which is dynamic and unforgiving when misunderstandings occur and repair of the conversation is required. I think that pretty much says it. I can chanter for England, but I have no idea when anyone's bored, or if anyone's fed up of it, or if I don't understand things properly, or if I think I'm waffling on and nobody really gets what I'm on about. Difficulties interpreting the subtle nuances of language, combined with awkwardness in social situations, create anxiety and undermine self-confidence. It's bang on. It is bang on. The conclusion's bang on. Since good communication skills usually underpin successful relationships, obviously the social communication difficulties impact on relationships. It's absolutely true. And it goes on to say that Kat may be aware of her when she is at risk of misunderstanding a situation, and would require a greater level of confidence to ask for more information. Now, this came up in my school reports, because in my school reports it says, I haven't got them here, so don't worry, it says that I hardly ever asked for explanations of things. So if I didn't understand stuff at school, I didn't ask for help. How crazy is that? It says so in my school reports that I just sat there and went, I'm just gonna try and make it up. It'll be fine. So, there's apparently no evidence in my childhood of me having problems, apart from the school reports, which say I never asked for help and I didn't communicate well with the other people in my class or the teachers. So basically it went on to that. And then it said about trying to think and slow my processes down to take more time, explain to people that I have communication differences and that I want to take more time over it, and that I prefer clear communication, and I may prefer the leaflet below to give people. Shows the leaflet. Basically, I was given that to print out and basically show people and give people, and it's basically saying, look, Autism Partnership Board, right? My communication's different. Most people are with a autism spectrum condition, okay? Most people with an autism spectrum condition will have some difficulties communicating with and understanding other people. Here's how to do it. Here's why, okay? In a leaflet form. Here's why. However, the next line says, it says, I've lost it now. Oh, here we go. Although she's not been diagnosed with an autism-specific disorder. What? Okay. So, I don't know. It's completely... The whole thing, both reports are completely argumentative with each other and themselves. So basically they go into very, very long detail about all the problems I've got and how I can research and find recommendations to overcome the issues and at least make things easier for myself, and that I'm neurodiverse, but I need to make people aware of this, and that I struggle with information and I struggle coping with different information in different forms, and that I struggle with processing it and it takes me longer and people need to be more patient with me, and that I should carry a leaflet around and I should talk to people and say I want you to be clear about things and I want you to take your time and explain things to me. However, apparently I don't have an autism spectrum disorder. What can I do? Anyway, the next step, apparently, is that I've now been referred, again, to, I've had went to the GP. GP passed me on to an initial assessor with the autism clinic. The assessor wrote up the first report, gave that to the rest of the team. The rest of the team said, okay, we need to pass this on to the complex team. So the complex team got hold of it, and the psychologist and a speech and language therapist wrote up 2 more reports, and now I've been passed on to a psychiatrist for my latest appointment, which is going to be in the next couple of months. So I've now been passed on again, and it's not like... My beef is that I haven't gone there with a parent, and I'm not 10, and it's not like my parents gone in and gone, here's Kat, she's 10 and she has trouble at school, or she's 5, you know, let's go right down the bottom end of the scale. She's 5 and she struggles with, like, just started junior school and isn't communicating well and isn't getting involved with anything, and struggles to make friends at the school now that she's started, and you know, it's becoming a problem. We think we need to get her assessed and diagnosed as on the spectrum. No, there's no parent there. I took myself to the appointment. I've sat there and done all the tests, which have given these results, okay, which I've just read out, and I'm 41 next week. And I think, you know, by the fact that I've sort of built up some coping mechanisms, and that I, you know, I don't know, I'm just getting by the best I can which is a struggle. All I'm trying to do is get someone to put down on a piece of paper that yes, she does struggle, and yes, she is on the spectrum, and yes, she does have issues, and she does need to be acknowledged as being on the spectrum like this. That's it. That's all I'm after. Just basically someone to say, yes, this is the problem, this is what it is, this is why she's struggling, and believe it. Take it. Don't ignore it. Take the information as read. This is what's happening. And she's 41 and she's done well so far, but she just needs this help now because it's getting harder as she's getting older. Because as you get older, I think what happens is as you get older, people just assume that you're experienced and wise and mature and older, and you should be able to do anything because you're 41, you've done everything, you've already been working since 99, and you've already been able to do everything and look after yourself. I'm not able to completely look after myself, I'm a bit of a nightmare. But mostly, in the main, I am able to actually get by myself. And there's lots of things I can't do. And when you tell people that, they go, but you're 41, you should be able to, you should look after yourself, you should take responsibility for yourself. I try. I do honestly try. I get by best as I can. I know there's lots of things I haven't done yet that's on my to-do list for this month, and I will get round to it, but I just haven't been able to do it yet. And I know there's lots of things that are normal everyday stuff for people, and I'm actually cutting them back and saying, no, I can't cope with that, so I'm not doing it anymore, and actually making my life easier all the time. Not by just getting things out of the way, by actually just not doing it anymore, by actually cutting things out of my life. That's how I'm coping at the moment. So at the moment, I just need somebody to say, okay, Kat, yes, you're definitely on the spectrum. Yes, this is why, this is what you are. And hopefully it's a forward-thinking psychiatrist. I'm going to wrap up in a minute, but I'm going to say that the other day, I think it's Jake, tell me if I'm wrong, Jake in America, who keeps in touch with me quite regularly on Twitter. Hi, thanks for being a fan and following. He sent me a little note the other morning saying, did you know that edition 11 of the, I assume it's the International Diagnosis Manual, ICD-11 it's called, it comes out in 2018, and the beta sort of pre-release version is being developed at the moment and put together. Guess what? They took out, in the last few years, Asperger's out of the manual and said you can't call it Asperger's anymore. You can't use the term Asperger's because that's not on the autistic. It is autistic scale, but it's not what we call it anymore. Okay, and what you had to do now, i.e., the trouble I'm having, is actually have the condition from when you're young. So when you're a toddler or you're starting school, that's when the condition starts. If you're 41 and you present with a condition, you don't have it, apparently, at the moment, because they took that information out of the manual. In 2018, let's make a point of this, 2018, Asperger's, okay, which is basically being on the autistic spectrum, but being high functioning and able to communicate properly and verbally without any trouble, like I am, is going back in. 2018, it's going back in the manual again. Why? Because there are people out there like me who have it, who are there, you know, and you can't just go, oh no, you don't, you're not on the spectrum, you're not, you can't be diagnosed because you didn't have it when you were 3. Well, sorry, but I'm 41, and you've made clear that I'm on the spectrum, and recommended that I research Asperger's. Hello, it actually says in black and white, research Asperger's, and yet you won't diagnose me with it because it's not in the manual. So, sorry, I'm turning this into a rant, but I'm annoyed. Hello, I've told you that I was Aspergic when I got in touch, and I'm quite happy to accept that. That's why my channel's called Adult Aspie and not Adult ASC, possibly somewhere down the bottom end, but maybe not because I wasn't when I was little. It's called Adult Aspie because that's what I reckon it is. Because I did research it for the last year and a half. I've researched it, and that's what I reckon it is. So there. So anyway, God, I have got annoyed this week, haven't I? Crikey. So there we are. Anyway, I've waffled on for half an hour again, well over half an hour, and trying to just, I know it wasn't very concise and it wasn't very clear, but hopefully you were entertained by just me bouncing around the screen, sort of bouncing around and doing my thing. I'm frustrated more than anything. I think that's what I'll call the episode. Cat's frustration. That's what I'm going to call it. Okay, so that's why it was called that at the beginning. Okay. I don't know what to do next. All I can do for the next couple of months is just keep making the odd video every week or two, based on specific subjects that we might want to dig into a bit deeper, and still wait. I'm actually talking to a few people about a possible second opinion. The first one I went to wouldn't do it because they wanted to do all the tests themselves, and I don't want to go through all that again. I've been through all that. I've got reports to give you all the results of what I've done already. I don't need to do it again. So, I don't know what to do. Suggestions, comments below. Send me a tweet or a Facebook message. Find us on at adultaspy.com, C-O-M on the end. And also the same address on Facebook now. Thanks to all the 20 odd people who all followed the page, the official Facebook page, and allowed me to register the address on there, because it requires you to have 25 people before you can register the username for the page. It is done, adultaspy.com. So go and check out the page on the Facebook as well. And thanks. I'm going to start thinking about some specific subjects to basically get my teeth into, because that will keep me sane, hopefully, for a little while we're waiting for somebody to pull their finger out and sort out some more chit-chat over a desk, working out what I am. So there we go. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in again. I'm sorry it's waffled on this week. Thanks for sticking with it. And next week, or the week after, whenever I get around to doing this, will be a quickie one, because it will be about a specific subject. So get in touch, let me know what you'd like me to chat about, ask any questions. If you've got any queries about my reports, if you want to know anything in particular, give me a shout. And in the meantime, I'll leave you with that. Oh, and by the way, next time I come on, I'll have more to show off on my tattoo, because on the 6th of May I'm having some more tattoo done, so you'll get to see. Yes. And the dog's Sparko, and has been very good. Do you want to see it before we go? I'm going to go. I'm going to leave you to it. There's the dog chilling out. She's been really good today. So, oops. Thanks ever so much for watching. And thanks also to Philippa for chatting on the phone today. It was really nice to chat to you, so thanks very much. And we'll do it again soon, and I'll come up and visit you at the studio. I'm going to go now. I've taken up 38 minutes of your time. So I'm going to go, and you keep in touch. And don't forget to subscribe and share, and make sure other people come and follow us too. Great stuff. See you later.